Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. As a servant to the many different people who make up our one Queensland community, it's my duty to ensure I deal with every bill that comes before the Senate fully and properly. All too often, this government does dodgy deals with the Teals crossbench and the Greens to get legislation through without scrutiny. Legislation that's written for reasons of ideology, not human need, and as a result makes things worse. Legislation that must go through without debate, lest the electorate be informed about what the government is really doing to them in the name of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I'm speaking about the Nature Repair Bill 2023, just a few hours from when the vote will be taken. Actually, only 30 minutes from when the vote will be taken. Yet I'm only speaking to an interim bill. The massive amendments to this bill, which I know now are substantial, had not been revealed to the Senate just an hour ago. It appears to be the government's plan to provide the amendments and then require an immediate vote, and that was exactly what we saw. That's not how the House of Review, our Senate, works. Even more troubling is the government now has a motion that would allow the Greens to amend the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act as part of this bill. News to us until an hour ago. What that means is the Greens, with Teal Senator Pocock's support, are being allowed to put a bill of their own making onto the end of the government's bill and then vote it all through. A bill we can't read, can't amend and can't debate. A bill we can't read, can't amend and can't debate. There's a long-standing convention in the Senate that we do one bill at a time and only amend the bill at hand, a rule the government is happy to ignore when they get desperate enough for numbers to do a deal with the Greens and Teals. This isn't parliamentary process, it is dictatorship, undemocratic dictatorship. What a joke, and the people will be paying for it. When we call the Greens watermelons, green on the outside and red on the inside, this is why. Soviet Russia would pull a stunt like this, not democratic Australia. I've spoken on several occasions recently on how this Labor government is best friends with the world's predatory, parasitic billionaires. This bill is a perfect example of that. Like the failed national electricity market, which is really a racket, the bill allows large corporations to greenwash their businesses. To explain, greenwashing allows a business, most likely a foreign multinational company, to make a claim such as net zero friendly. That's simply not true, deceiving investors and of customers in the process. They get to net zero from purchasing green certificates or carbon dioxide credits to balance out the environmental costs supposedly incurred in their business operation. A European Union report found that 95% of carbon dioxide credits came from projects that did not make a difference to the environment. And Europol, just a few years ago, said 95% are crooked. In other words, it's all a con. The mining industry have come out in favour of offsets, which they call avoided loss offsets. These offsets occur after purchasing and improving an area of land with the same habitat as that which is destroyed or damaged in the development. This may appear to be mining friendly, yet it's really more expense and more green tape that would best be handled through the existing system of remediation. Put it back the way you found it, or better, which is what is happening. Indeed, one could be concerned that these avoided loss offsets are an alternative to remediation. I certainly hope not. The bill helps out wind turbines with the whole problem of clubbing koalas on the koalas' property, clubbing them to death. They could literally club 10 koalas to death and then buy a national biodiversity certificate for 10 new koalas bred somewhere else. As we speak, the Australian Carbon Dioxide Credit Unit's review is underway. The review is looking at 1,000 carbon dioxide credit generating projects to see if they were fair income and have been kept up. The lessons from that review were going to be added to this bill to ensure the national biodiversity certificate system is legitimate. Bringing forward this bill actually ruins that process. One Nation opposes greenwashing, although in most cases we would suggest a better option is for our mining and manufacturing industries to firstly use environmental-friendly techniques, as they usually do, then having done that, be proud of their role in developing the economy, providing jobs and supplying materials people need for a life of abundance. Perhaps that's just we Conservatives taking care of the natural environment and taking care of people. Some submissions to the Senate inquiry called on the government to purchase the certificates themselves to provide certainty that, should a project be completed, there will be someone to buy the resulting certificate. Minister Plibersek has ruled this out, the only decision in this whole process One Nation can support. I was amused with the submission from Champagne Socialist and the Byron Shire Council, who submitted that, quote, free market alone may not facilitate rapid uptake of this scheme, and called on the federal government to kickstart the market by committing to purchasing certificates itself. It'll never stop. I would think the federal government is better spending money on tax cuts for working Australians and paying off our debt so interest rates come down. But that's just conservative values again. Human values, real environmental values. Minister Plibersek has described this bill as creating a green Wall Street. Wall Street provides a means for financing of business to expand productive capacity. This bill provides a means to restrict productive capacity through taking productive farmland and returning it to Gaia. I don't see the comparison with a genuine financial product, unless the minister was making a comparison to Bernie Madoff. That would be accurate in that case. The product itself, biodiversity credits, is subjective and over time will require more and more and more personnel to conduct compliance on an ever-increasing number of projects, just like the national electricity market, the racket. This does not increase productive capacity. It does increase bureaucracy at the public expense, of course. Many submissions opposed the use of these certificates for environmental offsets, including the Greens, and I note their amendments remove the offsets purpose of for these certificates. This would seem a significant conflict between the minister's intent and the Greens' intent. What a mess! The Nature Repair Bill 2023 is a solution to a problem that has not yet been defined and does not meet real needs, just like the failed national electricity market. The government is working on an update of the entire Environmental Protection and Biosecurity Conservation Act, the EPBC, informed by the Samuels report into the legislation from 3 years ago. Those amendments will frame the problem this bill is supposedly solving. This is something Senator Thorpe has correctly pointed out in a second reading amendment, which I will support. How do you pass a bill like this ahead of the implementation of the Samuels report? How do we know what projects should be supported and which are not needed? Or worse, which projects are a load of bollocks, like the stuff that comes out of a south end of a northbound bull?
Senator Roberts, I'll ask you to mind your language. Thank you.
As most climate projects are, climate fraud. In relation to ensuring integrity around the use of offsets, the Australian government is working to introduce a new national environmental standard for restoration actions and restoration contributions. This new standard is expected to include a requirement that offsets must deliver net gain for impacted protected matters and that biodiversity projects certified under the Nature Repair Markets Bill would only be able to be used as offsets if they met the new standard. What new standard? Oh, wait, you haven't written it yet. Great. Minister Plibersek is trying to pass a bill that implements a standard that hasn't been written yet. Can someone please give the government's legislation chocolate wheel back to Rotary and we'll go back to doing things properly, you know, in the correct order? This legislation implements something called the Nature Positive Plan. Now, that sounds good. This is the government's overarching environmental blueprint. I notice this plan includes on page 32 a provision for, quote, traditional owners will have more control over Commonwealth and national parks. More control? Australians who are used to bushwalking, camping and generally enjoying the beautiful national parks Australia offers are flat out of luck under this Labor government. No nature for you. Get back to your 15-minute cities. That's exactly what the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals do. It reduces everyday Australians to the status of serfs, imprisoned in their 15-minute cities, locked in a digital identity prison, owning nothing and eating bugs instead of real food. I first said that in the Senate in 2016, and the sniggers were obvious. Well, nobody's sniggering now. Now you're all trying to justify the abomination your globalist masters are working to impose. Over the remainder of the Albanese government, those in this chamber will be required to face the reality of this government's globalist agenda. It's not an agenda written for the benefit of everyday Australians or for the Labor heartland. It's an agenda that serves the self-interest of the world's predatory investment funds, delivered through lobby groups like the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, and implemented repeatedly in legislation like this. It's an agenda that will make life a misery for everyday Australians, sending them back to serfhood. One Nation stands against everything this bill represents, proudly stands against everything this bill represents.